All right, so to close out Module 3, we're going to be planning for language. Before I dive into my model, I want to highlight that language is really embedded throughout your entire PBEL. It should be in your inquiry, it should be in your solution development and sharing. You identified those language standards to start with. We've pulled it out in the planning guide just to highlight it and emphasize it and give you some space to make sure that you're being intentional with that planning. All right, so I'm going to look at language function. I'm going to look at language skills. So the first question I'm going to ask myself is, what role do I want my students to play? So in climate change, I really want them to be scientists, and specifically an environmental scientist. So I'm really asking them to take on a role or a discipline. Then I thought about scientists, I thought about what I wanted them to do, and I wanted to identify a language function, a language that they were going to use. They're going to use lots of language, and you did use lots of language in this experience, but what specifically do I want to emphasize? All right, and that was the language of inquiry. Remember, we have that toolkit to help you pick out a language function, but that's not an exhaustive list. There's hundreds of language functions out there. All right, so then if I want to use the language of inquiry, it has to be explicitly taught, modeled. I want to choose supports that are really going to help you use that language function. So how did we do that? We used the I notice and I wonder. In the classroom, I probably would have done a picture walk with that. In this experience, we had that kind of collaborative document that we created, and we had our Pear Deck where we were sort of responding to it. All right. Now, in addition to teaching the language of inquiry, I wanted to think about language skills. What specific skills did you need in order to be successful in this PBEL? One of the biggest ones, this is a huge research skill. It goes back to the standards that we identified in Module 2, is paraphrasing. And I can't just say, okay, guys, I want you to paraphrase. Use your own words. Good luck. I wanted to make sure that you had some practice with it. So I defined paraphrasing. I gave you some resource, those 4 R's, to help you kind of remember how to do it. But then we practiced it. I modeled it, and you practiced it with the quiz. With my students in person, I probably would have done a quiz trade, where that way they could just keep practicing it over and over again. That's not the only language skills I want students to have. I also really want them to be able to create an argument. And one of the ways that I can do that is using that Swires lesson that I modeled for you earlier. So you've already identified a language skill, and you've already planned a lesson plan during this module. So if you want to, on this plan, if you just want to write out what the lesson is, just the name of it, that would be another way of including a language skill on your plan, because I know you already have a longer lesson plan elsewhere. All right, and here's what that looks like or could look like on the graphic organizer. Remember that this model is linked on this page.